Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV News. This is Fahmid Islam with you. Before moving on, let's look at today's top stories. Barack Obama mocks grumpy cat Republicans. Lincoln Shafi drops out of 2016 White House race. Hurricane Patricia makes landfall in Mexico. Northern powerhouse project has Chinese backing, says David Cameron. And bomb attack on Shia gathering in Dhaka kills 1, injures at least 75. Well, those were the headlines, now the details. US President Barack Obama has hit out at his Republican rivals, accusing them of being so down on America and always suggesting that everything is terrible. They are gloomy, they are like grumpy cat, the president added, comedically referencing the feline internet sensation as he addressed the Democratic National Committee's Women's Leadership Forum. The 62-year-old former Republican told the Democratic National Committee on Friday morning he was ending his candidacy for the 2016 election. He has struggled to raise money and make any impact in the Democratic field, which is led by Hillary Clinton. Mr. Shafi has served as a Republican and an independent but had never before run for office as a Democrat. At a women's forum held by the Democratic National Committee, he said, "After much thought, I have decided to end my campaign for president today. But I would like to take this opportunity one last time to advocate for a chance be given to peace." Mr. Shafi was, as he pointed out in the recent Democratic debate, the only Republican to vote against the Iraq War. His departure means there are only 3 Democrats left: Mrs. Clinton, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. The storm is seen as potentially catastrophic in its impact. Mexican authorities evacuated thousands of residents along the country's Pacific coast before the hurricane hit. The storm is comparable to Typhoon Haiyan, which killed 6,300 people in the Philippines in 2013, the World Meteorological Organization says. A state of emergency has been declared in 3 states in Patricia's path. It made landfall in the Suitmala area of Jalisco State, some 85 kilometers from the port city of Manzanillo. It made landfall in the Quizmala area of Jalisco State, some 85 kilometers from the port city of Manzanillo. The U.S. National Hurricane Center in Miami said it hit the coast with winds of 265 kilometers per hour. Video filmed in Manzanillo shortly before the hurricane struck shows trees bending in severe wind. It comes as the Prime Minister and Chinese President Xi Jinping spent the last day of Mr. Xi's state visit in Manchester. Mr. Xi visited Manchester University and joined the Prime Minister at Manchester City's Football Academy. He then ended his UK trip at Manchester Airport and announced plans for direct flights between Manchester and Beijing. Crowds in Manchester gathered to welcome the Chinese president, but there have also been protests by groups unhappy with China's human rights record, including one outside Manchester Town Hall on Friday. The Institute of Directors said only serious breaches made the headlines, but attacks on British businesses happen constantly. The government replied by saying it was committed to tackling cybercrime. It comes as police are investigating a ransom demand from a group purporting to be behind the Tok Tok attack. The Home Office said it had invested £860 million in cybersecurity through the National Cybersecurity Program. Tok Tok revealed on Wednesday night it had been the victim of a cyber attack in which the personal and banking detail of up to 4 million of its customers may have been accessed by hackers. The company said it was too early to say just how many customers had been affected. A criminal investigation has been launched and the IOD called for urgent action to tackle one of the biggest threats facing businesses and their customers. Vulcan bombers were built at the height of the Cold War to carry Britain's nuclear weapons to the Soviet Union. Pilot Martin Withers said its original function was to keep the peace and not really to drop bombs. Mr. Withers was one of the pilots to fly the last airworthy Vulcan XH-558, which is in its final season of flight. Vulcans from RAF Wellington in Lincolnshire were involved in 7 missions to bomb Port Stanley airfield. The raids were the only time in the Vulcan's 30-year service with the RAF that saw it drop bombs in anger. Mr. Withers said aside from its use in the Falklands, the purpose of the Vulcan was to be a nuclear deterrent. It's not there really to drop bombs. It was about developing something that is capable of doing it to make sure nobody does attack you. And it did prove it doesn't work. He said. He added, it came very close in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also urged an intensification of efforts to find a political solution to the war. Mr. Lavrov was speaking after meeting his counterparts from Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the US. On Thursday, President Putin suggested the Syrian regime could be ready to work with some rebel groups against the so-called Islamic State. Mr. Putin said President Assad had agreed to the idea on a recent visit to Moscow. Speaking at the start of talks in Vienna on Friday, Mr. Lavrov said, "Our common position is that we need to boost efforts for the political process in the Syrian settlement. This foresees a start to full-scale talks between representatives of the Syrian government and the full spectrum of the Syrian opposition, both domestic and external, with the support of outside players." We'll take a short break here. Do stay with us. We are back in a moment with the headlines here. President PM paid tribute to Hazrat Imam radiallahu anha on the eve of Holy Ashura. Nigeria bombs leave at least 42 dead in Maiduguri and Yola. Benghazi attack, 6 die as mortars hit Libya protest. Pakistan unrest, suicide bombers kills Shia marchers in Jacobabad. And Neymar returns in Brazil squad against Argentina. Welcome back to Millennium TV News. At least 27 people died when a bomb targeted a newly opened mosque in the town of Yola. Earlier, 15 people were killed in a suicide bombing in Maiduguri. It is not clear who carried out the bombings, but the Islamist militant group Boko Haram has carried out many attacks in the area. The group has targeted both Christians and Muslims who do not adhere to their ideology. The first blast in Maiduguri occurred early on Friday morning as worshippers arrived for dawn prayers. An eyewitness told AFP that there was one suicide bomber involved. The second largest blast targeted worshippers attending Friday prayers at a newly inaugurated mosque in the Jimeta area of Yola. Thousands of people have been killed and millions forced to leave their homes by Boko Haram violence in recent years. Several hundred people were protesting against a proposed UN-backed peace deal that would form a new unity government. The mortars were fired from an Islamist-held district, a police spokesman told AP news agency. Over the last year, Benghazi has seen fierce clashes between the military and various Islamist brigades. Among them are Ansar al-Sharia and groups that have pledged allegiance to the so-called Islamic State militant group. Friday's protest central Benghazi was against proposals brokered by the United Nations envoy to Libya for a new unity government. The proposal was made after nearly a year of talks between the Islamist-backed parliament in Tripoli and the internationally recognized administration in the East. Both parliaments will have to vote on whether to accept the deal, but many MPs across the country have dismissed the plan. Coordinating Security Minister Luhut Pandjaitan said an evacuation was one contingency among several others. Southeast Asia has been particularly hit hard this year by the haze, an annual occurrence. It has caused serious health issues, particularly among those living in the epicenters Kalimantan and Sumatra. Mr. Pandjaitan and authorities had identified at least 6 provinces where children and babies could be evacuated. Local media say but any evacuation would depend on approval from President Joko Widodo. Other options include moving residents to government offices equipped with air purifiers, Reuters news agency reports. Zhejiang University economics professor Zai Zhuoxi's proposal has been met with heavy criticism that it is immoral. China has one of the biggest gender imbalances in the world, with about 118 boys born to every 100 girls. The imbalance is largely due to the one-child policy and cultural preferences for male children. Increasing wealth and population movement also means many women are leaving the countryside to work in cities, with men who stay behind struggling to find partners. At least 5 children are among the dead. Dozens of people were wounded in the attack in the city of Jacobabad. It was the second attack in as many days targeting celebrations of the Shia holiday of Ashura in Pakistan. On Thursday, a suicide bomber killed 10 people at a mosque in Balochistan province. A radical Sunni group had threatened violence during the holiday. No group, however, has said it carried out Friday's bombing. A crowd of Shia men and women dressed in black was marching in the streets of Jacobabad when it was hit by the explosion. The violence came despite extra security measures in the run-up to Ashura on Saturday, when Shia Muslims held massive rallies to mourn the death of Imam Hussein, a grandson of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The Sunni Muslim militant group Lashkar-e-Jhangvi had claimed Thursday's bombing in the Bolan district of Balochistan and threatened more attacks against Shia. It came as 100 writers protested outside the council demanding it takes measures to protect freedom of speech. Several writers have returned their awards to the council in recent weeks, protesting against what they call rising intolerance in India. The Academy has condemned any atrocity against any writer in India and urged writers to take back their awards. In recent weeks, growing numbers of writers have been protesting against book bans, the silencing of writers like Perumal Murugan following attacks by right-wing groups, and the killings of rationalists such as Melashappa Kalburgi and Govind Pansare this year. The Academy had been criticized for not speaking out against the attacks sooner, with over 40 writers returning their awards to protest the institution's silence on the attacks against dissent. President Mohammad Abdul Hamid and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina have issued separate messages on Friday on the eve of Holy Ashura, paying deep respects to Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu anha and other martyrs of the Battle of Karbala. Prophet Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's grandson Hazrat Imam Hussain, his family and a number of his followers embraced martyrdom at Karbala on the 10th Muharram of Hijri 61 in a battle to establish truth and justice. President in his message said the supreme sacrifice of Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu anha and his companions in Karbala for upholding the ideals of Islam, the religion of peace and tranquility, is as a glorious event in the Islamic history. The Prime Minister urged all to learn from the teachings of Holy Ashura to establish truth and justice in all spheres, to tackle all kinds of injustice in life. She said the sacrifice of Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu anha and his companions to establish peace and justice in society is a glaring example for the Muslim Ummah across the world. The day of Ashura is significant in human history, she said, adding that this day is very sacred to the Muslims across the world. At least one person has been killed and 75 wounded as 3 bombs exploded in the midst of a gathering of Shia Muslims outside Old Dhaka's Hosseini Dalan. The blast occurred around 1:30 a.m. when members of Shia community were gathering at the building. About half an hour before the traditional Tajia procession was to be brought out from there to mark the Holy Ashura. After the incident, panic spread out around the spot as people rushed for safety. Later, the law enforcers rushed in and cordoned the area. Rapid Action Battalion and Border Guard Bangladesh Security were also deployed in the area. Despite the attack, the Shia community people brought out their procession from the same spot wearing black dresses and chanting ritualistic slogans. The deceased has been identified as Sanju, aged between 10 and 12 years. DMCH Police Camp Sub-Inspector Muzammil Haq said at least 44 people wounded in the blasts were hospitalized. However, none of the victims was in critical condition. Around 20 to 25 injured people were transferred to Midford Hospital for better treatment. Midford Hospital's emergency ward Dr. Masudur Rahman said that 31 injured people came to the hospital and more were still coming in. Now the businesses news. The Dow Jones gained 157.54 points or 0.9% to 17,646.70, while the wider S&P 500 rose to 22.64 points or 1.1% to 2,075.15. The Nasdaq climbed 111.82 points or 2.3% to 5,031.86 on the back positive tech earnings reports late on Thursday. This is the first time the index has closed above 5,000 since August. Shares in Microsoft surged 10% after better results. Alphabet shares finished up 7.9% after reaching a record of $752.50 early in the day. The total stock is worth about 1% of the company or $197 million. The plan is to reinvest directly in our people, said Mr. Dorsey, who was appointed as the company's prominent leader earlier this month. Twitter did not comment further on the decision last week. The company said it would lay off 336 workers or 8% of staffs. Mr. Dorsey, who took over as temporary chief in July after Dick Costello resigned, also tweeted, "I would rather have a smaller part of something big than a bigger part of something small." Now the sports news. The English Football Association has been fined €15,000 over crowd disturbances in the 3-0 victory in Lithuania earlier this month. The Scottish FA must pay €20,000 after home fans invaded the pitch during the draw with Poland. Poland and Lithuania were also punished for the behavior of their supporters. UEFA have ordered the Polish FA to pay €40,000 after their fans clashed with stewards during the 2-2 draw at Hampden Park on 8 October. Neymar has been named in Dunga's squad for Brazil's upcoming games against Argentina and Peru, but there is no place for Felipe Coutinho. Barcelona forward Neymar is available after serving a 4-match suspension for sending off during this summer's Copa America. Brazil have World Cup qualifiers at Argentina on November 13 and at home to Peru on November 18th. Liverpool's Coutinho will not take part, however, after being left out by Dunga along with club teammate Roberto Firmino. Brazil opened their CONMEBOL qualifying campaign with a 2-0 loss to Chile before bouncing back with a 3-1 win over Venezuela. Let's have a look at Millennium TV News Recap. Barack Obama mocks grumpy cat Republicans. Lincoln Shafi drops out of 2016 White House race. Hurricane Patricia makes landfall in Mexico. Northern powerhouse project has Chinese backing, says David Cameron. And bomb attack on Shia gathering in Dhaka kills 1, injures at least 75. You're up to date with our top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log into www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you for staying with us. Allah Hafiz.